All right, JMC 6000 here in the JMC Garage for this week's JMC Garage Talk video. We're focusing on the LK0 2.5 turbocharged Chevy engine. Now, you may be like, where in the world are you going to find this engine at? Well, it's actually underneath the hood of the GMC Acadia, underneath the hood of the Chevy Traverse, underneath the hood of the Buick. I forget what the Buick one is called. All right, don't worry about it. I'm sure somebody will say it in the comments. But anyway, this engine right here is loosely based off of the 2.7 that is found in the GMC Canyon, Chevy Colorado, Chevy Silverado, also called the Turbo Max, and in the GMC Sierra, also called the Turbo Max. So what GM did is they took the basis of that engine, I believe they de-stroked it, and they came to a 2.5 versus the 2.7. Now, let me show you some of the features and some of the complications of this particular 2.5 motor. So what we have up here, you may be like, what in the world is that? So there was an engine cover on this. I've taken the engine cover off to reveal this massive air to water intercooler. So basically what happens is you have fresh air that comes in from the air box here, goes in through this long tube, goes through a silencer, goes down to the back side of the turbo, which is back over here. After the turbo compresses the air, comes up through here, in through this pipe, through this part of the air-to-water intercooler, goes through the air-to-water intercooler, then it goes down into the throttle body intake, or into the plastic intake, which is right down here. Is your plastic intake. One of the unique features about this engine, besides having an air-to-water intercooler, I believe I think it's on the 2.7, it's actually a air-to-air intercooler. I may be wrong about that, but somebody can double check me in the comments. One of the unique features about this engine, besides it is only direct injected, it is not direct import injected, it's only direct injected. And also another unique feature about this engine is that the intake cam, as you can see right there, right where my finger is, see that right there? That is electronically actuated for the variable valve timing. It doesn't use an oil control sensor, or a solenoid rather. The exhaust uses an oil control, but the intake is going the way of like Mazda. I believe Honda is doing it as well. And a couple other companies are actually using electronic control actuation for the variable valve timing. So a couple things to note about this engine and a couple downsides about this engine that I see right off the bat. Besides the overcomplication, when I removed the cover, I wasn't expecting to see this massive thing. But obviously you had the air-to-water intercooler. Now, unfortunately, in order to get to any of the spark plugs, well, you can get to one of the spark plugs here, but in order to get to the rest of the 3 spark plugs on this 4-cylinder, this air-to-water intercooler has to be removed. There's no way around it. So in order to do tune-ups or anything like that, it's an extra complication that I don't think I've ever seen before, where this air-to-water intercooler, you have to actually remove out of the way in order to just get to the spark plugs. How convoluted is that? Come on, GM, really? Also, another thing, this engine, again, is only direct injected. It's not port injected, so carbon buildup could be an issue for this particular engine, which is another downside to this engine. And also, another downside to this engine has to be this engine does implore, just like the 2.7, this 2.5 does implore cylinder deactivation. That means this engine can shut off some of its cylinders, some of its cylinders to help save fuel. In fact, from what I understand, it can shut off 2 of its cylinders. It can essentially be a 2-cylinder engine at times on highway speeds just to save fuel. So not only do you have this air-to-water intercooler on top of the engine, the direct injection only, and now you have cylinder deactivation on top of some of the other things that this engine is featuring. It makes it an overcomplicated engine, and I have to say, because of this engine of itself, man, I don't know if I could ever recommend a vehicle like this. I mean, the engine is just uber complicated to work on. Look how much stuff you have to take off and remove in order to just get to the spark plugs. It's insane. It's crazy. I mean, I shouldn't have to worry about disconnecting coolant lines and everything else just to get to the spark plugs. Now, I will say this. It looks like the air-to-water intercooler does use coolant from I hear Mustang in the background. It does use coolant from the engine coolant to actually help to cool down the charged air going into the engine. It doesn't have a separate coolant tank, which is nice. From what I understand, also, this engine employs an electric water pump. It doesn't use an actual belt-driven water pump like most engines do. This actually uses an electric water pump without a thermostat, or maybe it's an electric thermostat. I have to remember correctly. But from what I understand, it doesn't use a thermostat. It actually circulates the water depending on the load of the engine, how warmed up it is, and everything else in between. So there's a lot of complication with this engine. And I don't know. GM has gone to the extra mile to try and make this thing efficient, and it's not that very efficient. I mean, we're talking about in this AT4 trim on the highway at 75 miles an hour, you can get at best 23.5 miles to the gallon. That's not very good considering this is a family vehicle, and there's other vehicles out there that can get a lot better, like Highlander Hybrid, or even others that are just running a basic 4-cylinder that get better miles per gallon than this thing can, especially with the overcomplication that this engine provides. So anyway, this is my GMC Garage Talk review, reviewing the 2.5 and just kind of the ins and outs of this engine and what we have underneath the hood. Other things about this, I will say it's easy to get to the battery. At least you can still check the oil. You can't do that on other American makes. Hashtag Dodge Hurricane, Ram Hurricane. Excuse me. That come out of my mouth. I'm so sorry. You can check the oil in this, and you can actually do your own oil changes. But again, there's just a lot involved with this engine, and they really didn't have to go this extra mile just for this particular engine. But other than that, if you have any other questions, comments, or anything else you want to know about this particular engine and whatnot, please shoot me a comment in the section down below. I'd love to hear about those things. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I upload every single Wednesday morning and every single Saturday afternoon with GMC Garage Talk. All right, you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you on the next one.